Salutations to you all! I hope that you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever the hour is when you're watching this video. This time, let's take a look at RWBY Arrowfell. Please be aware that there will be some spoilers here, but I'm gonna try to keep that to a minimum. So, firstly, I'd like to preface this by letting you know that I'm bad at side-scrollers. The last one I played to any great extent was Castle Crashers, so if you're good at side-scrollers and that's your thing, then some of my points may not apply to you. So Arrowfell has finally released, and it took an unusually long time on the 15th for it to become available. I have no idea what that was about, but booting up the game, the first thing I noticed was that there is no input for the mouse, not even on the main menu. So that was a bit jarring. It really feels like this was set up with controllers in mind, as opposed to mouse and keyboard. Then jumping into the game, there's next to no tutorial. Yeah, for shooters and the like, controls tend to be pretty standardized, but I haven't played a side-scroller in years, and I didn't realize I could actually attack anything until I hit the J key by accident. Then my profound lack of skill at this genre reared its ugly head, and I proceeded to die twice during the intro sequence. This brings me to my first point. In the beginning of the game, you are incredibly fragile and deal very little damage. This will dissipate as you collect skill points, but the beginning of the game was a slog for me. The middle of the game I found to be quite fun. Once I wasn't losing hearts from every encounter and could reliably kill things, I was having a great time. But I did have some issues with the combat. There's this weird juxtaposition in that you generally need to attack enemies in melee to kill them, but you take damage if they touch you. This means that if something decides to bum rush you, there is nothing you can do to prevent that. So you have to be in this sweet spot where you can hit the enemies, but they aren't touching you. In the early game, I had to find ways to cheese the encounters because I was too frail to kill things before they trampled me. And this leads into the second problem. Your ranged attacks deplete your defense bar, meaning that in areas where enemies are at a distance or flying around, new enemies can spawn in on top of you after you've lowered your defense bar to kill the previous enemies. Then you can rapidly lose multiple hearts after you lose the first one because your defense bar won't regenerate after losing a heart. So your enemies can snowball your health by not giving you a place to stand, like the infuriating little hopping enemies that you'll encounter. But one of the biggest issues for me personally was that the 5 bosses you'll fight in this game don't have a visible health bar. Oh, you'll still see the damage numbers you inflict on them, but that won't have any context. Yes, I did 11 damage, but that's what percentage of this thing's health. This leads to you just spam attacking when you get the chance, and hoping for the best. I still haven't beaten the final boss because his attack pattern is seemingly random, and he has 3 phases. But because nothing has a visible health bar, I don't know how close I am to triggering his next phase, and trying to make do when he can essentially delete a heart in one hit just isn't something I want to subject myself to at present. But then there's the issue of whether or not this is supposed to be canon. If it is, then we run into the issue where the events here are never referenced, and probably never will be, because that would create a gap in the narrative of the show where people who didn't play this game won't know what the characters are talking about. The plot is mostly self-contained, but I do have to question why no other characters involved themselves in taking down Thornmain. The Aesops just disappear, and characters like Crow and Penny just leave Team RWBY to do it all on their own. Team Juniper isn't even mentioned. But the biggest head-scratcher was why Team Briar just sort of gives up. They're upset that Thornmain duped them, but then they just give up their access cards to Team RWBY and disappear to hang out in some caves. Why? Don't you want to take him down? Harper was there, I guess. She just betrays Team RWBY out of nowhere, then shows up to say that she regrets it, and gives you some skill points, then vanishes from existence. There really wasn't much to her. They did bring in the voice talent for the show, but they mostly just grunt and say single words. While Team RWBY does speak in the few short cutscenes, which are animated well, I have to question why they were brought in at all, if all they were going to do was make caveman sounds. They also did some strange portrayals of certain characters. RWBY is just dumb in this for some reason, not able to understand what's happening in many situations. She feels more like Caboose from Red vs. Blue than RWBY. Weiss is more like Volume 1 Weiss, but amplified, making mean comments to Penny for some reason. Blake and Yang just sort of exist. They don't really get any true lines or development out of just general comments of the scenario they're in. Finally, upgrading your stats does make the game more fun, now that you'll be able to reliably kill things. They're mostly just stat upgrades though. Nothing really changes the way you'll play. I do find it strange that all 4 of the characters share the same hearts and defense bar. It sort of takes away from the point of having multiple characters if one dying results in them all dying. All of them will receive an upgrade to their semblance ability, but Blake and Yang receive them from random NPCs. Ruby and Weiss got theirs from Harriet and Winter respectively, but random non-combatant civilians somehow teach the other 2 how to be better. Just what? Still, the middle of the game was quite fun. It's just the beginning and end that are a chore. The $30 price tag is a bit steep for what this game has to offer, but if side-scrollers are your thing, or if you're just really itching for something RWBY while we wait for Volume 9, then you could pick it up whenever it goes on sale. But this was just my experience. What about you? If this assessment helped you decide whether or not to give this game a try, then I would appreciate you leaving a like and subscribing to see more. And may you all have a weapon in each hand.